Mary Queen of the World wanted to put together a unique church in the sense of they wanted to reflect Newfoundland and Newfoundland people and the landscape and all of that kind of thing to as a reflective thing for the people, because it is in fact a truly Newfoundland church, you know. And so they wondered about how to go about this, and a couple of people suggested various things, and I'm not quite sure how they got a hold of me, but I met Father Adrian at an exhibition of my Cassandra paintings, and he seemed to like them, and he saw something in them that he thought might work, and asked me to prepare some sketches and drawings for the triptych, and which I did, and they liked it, and that's how it began. But actually, the whole idea of working for churches started with me a long time ago. In Toronto, about 20 years ago, 25 years ago, I started to look into other churches, particularly the Catholic Church, and I got very interested in the ceremonial aspect of it, and discovered the Stations of the Cross there, and thought, even at that time, would make a fantastic series of paintings. However, I never got around to doing it because of cost and time and so on, until this opportunity arose. And so it goes back that far. It's not just a new thing for me. It's been with me a long time.
It's pretty unusual, I think, for a church here to commission a local artist to do anything like that, isn't it? It must be.
Yeah, I believe it's I don't think it's the first commission for a local artist in a church, but it certainly is the largest one, because the whole church is now reflects my imagery. And I've been at it now for about 2.5 years.
Did you feel somewhat inhibited at all as an artist, because I guess the stations are determined by tradition and so on? You had to paint certain figures in certain positions and so on for each painting, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. And when I was commissioned to do it, I thought that I would try to make it a Newfoundland and reflect my own work in that. So what I did, I eliminated the angry Jews and the Romans, and made it very local. And I wanted my idea was to express the passion of this man Christ in his loneliness, and so I eliminated the crowd, which also gave me the opportunity then to develop my own landscape paintings in and around it, and setting them in a Newfoundland environment. And this was very pleasing to Father Adrian, because this, of course, again is going to reflect ourselves and our own people. And this is what his ambition was.
Did you get any negative reaction to that, people wanting the more traditional kind of approach with Roman legions?
Very, very little, actually. I thought I would. At first it's very hard to accept, particularly if you're used to doing the stations and doing it in the old, seeing the imagery all of your life, you know, the Romans and the Jews and Jerusalem and all of that connection. And at first, I'm sure that the older people found it rather difficult, but one or two times around, and they accept this very easily, you know.
I guess setting it in a Newfoundland landscape gave you the opportunity to do something that you love to do, paint this landscape.
That's right.
But it also gives the paintings a special meaning, doesn't it? I guess in...
I think the meaning comes off more, at least from my point of view it would. It brings it very close to home, the whole idea of it, and the teachings of Christ, I think, brings it very, very close, brings it to us, because after all, Christ is not just an historical figure. It's become much more than that now. It's become a very personal journey, you know, for all of us. And I wanted to reflect that in the work.
I guess actually too, the painters of the Renaissance and so on, in their religious paintings, set the biblical figures in their contemporary surroundings, didn't they?
They did. Oh yes, yeah. It's traditional, really, in the stations. It's only in the last, well, 100 years or so that we've maintained that, you know, the old traditions in the church. But when the artists were working on them at that time in the Renaissance, they were using contemporary people, their friends, and so on, as part of that.
Mm-hmm.
And that was bringing it home too for them. And that's what we're doing here. Same idea.
Now, you used models, I guess, and I suppose that was very critical. Was it selecting the people you would use?
Yeah, well, I had to have an emotional link with models. I didn't just hire a model and have them sit for it. I had to have an emotional link with them. And so I used my own family and my very closest friends for that reason.
Could you talk about some of the figures? Say the mother of Jesus, for instance. Now, what were you looking for there?
Well, I was looking for a really good, strong, intelligent Newfoundland face, a female face, to use as the mother. And I wanted somebody around that age, around 40, and so on. And so I chose Ruth Black, who is a childhood friend of mine, and is also now a student of mine as well, and has been for the last 5 years or so. So we have a very close relationship, and we understand about, because we were raised in the Salvation Army. I mean, her mother was a Salvation Army officer, and so was I. So we have that link to the Christian aspect of it. So I thought she would be the perfect person, and as it worked out, it was grand, really well.
What about some of the other figures? There's, well, for instance, Simon.
Simon, yes. He was the one who carried the cross for Christ. So I needed a more physical person, an individual. And I chose John Chidley, who's a fisherman on the southern shore, who's a very good friend of mine, and has been for the last 15 years. I've known him ever since I've been in Ferryland. And so I chose him mainly because of his build and his relationship with the sea and the church as well, because he's a strong Catholic. You know. And then there was Stuart Pearson, who posed for Joseph of Arimathea, and as Joseph was more of an intellectual person and more of a philosophical person, I used Stuart for that. It reflected that kind of thing to me, because I always found Stuart that way.
Veronica is another.
Veronica was my daughter Esther, and it was mainly because of Esther's gentleness and her concern for people and animals and things like that. So she had that sort of, she has a giving kind of quality about her face. So I used her for Veronica.
What about Christ himself? Did you?
Well, Christ I invented that figure, but I use myself as well, because I've tried to put myself into that position in order to understand that passion. So I became the Christ image, but I never, you know, deliberately copied my features or anything.
No, it doesn't really resemble you.
It doesn't really resemble me, but it was me, and it was, and then it was the interesting thing too, that I was also the Christ figure, but I also put my self as the executioner in the painting. So it's kind of interesting, you know, psychologically speaking. You know.
How did you work with the models? Did you sort of actually go out into the landscape itself, where they're set with them at all? Or?
Yeah, well, I chose my areas. I found a road in Portugal Cove, goes out around the cliffs, an old road near the old graveyard. And I went out there and I photographed. I had a troupe come and pose for certain stations all the way along, just to get the compositions correctly. And the people that I used in the photography was not the models that I ended up using in the end. So, but I set it up. I photographed each station along the way. And I used Portugal Cove and then Topsail Beach for the tomb. There's an old, might be a mine shaft or something, in a quartz side of the mountain. And it's cut right into, so I used that area. And then the crucifixion area, I wanted to tie it in with the triptych, so I went to Fairyland, and the crucifixion part, like the descent from the cross and the crucifixion and Christ dying on the cross, is all in the same area as the triptych was painted. See, I tried to tie it in all together. So if when you're going around the church, you'll notice that you're going along the road, and then you arrive in Fairyland at the same spot, and then you have the two people taking him to the tomb in Topsail Beach. So it's kind of tied it together like that, you see.
I guess doing 14 paintings, well, 15 including the triptych, all dealing with the crucifixion, must have had an impact on you, and you certainly have not shied away from the gruesome aspect of the crucifixion. Did you find that difficult at all?
No, I had a great struggle with the resurrection. And I worked on the triptych for about 8 months, I suppose. And the crucifixion would naturally come easier, because we do understand pain and suffering, but none of us has ever been resurrected. So I was jumping at it. I was taking my chances with it. And I, at one point, wanted to almost to go very, very traditional about it. And I kept changing the imagery all the time. And I fought with it for about almost 2 months. And the face of the resurrected Christ came very, very difficult, because I couldn't understand. I couldn't get into that space, you know what I mean? And so I changed the face at least 14 times before I finally hit on this one face that worked for me. So I had the crucifixion, as I say, I had no trouble with, and the same with the Stations of the Cross. I had no trouble dealing with that, because it was in fact a suffering and loneliness and all the things that we know as human beings. It was the other aspect really got me.
What were you looking for in the face of the risen Christ?
Well, I was looking for the new man, you know, something that would refer to as satori, or an enlightenment kind of thing. That's what I was looking for. And I looked at the Buddhas, and I looked at the other artists' works of resurrections and so on. And I finally had to dismiss it all, because I just couldn't come through it. And I said, well, I've got to find this on my own, you know. And I thought that what I finally ended up with was pretty good, you know. I don't know whether I would, if I had to do it again, I don't know if it would be the same. But that was the only problem that I had, was the resurrection.
There's in the large triptych, how large is it, by the way?
It's 18 feet by 5 feet. There are 3 panels.
There's a very interesting use of light in it too, so that it
yeah,
the darkness on one side.
That's right. Well, I wanted to show that that's another thing about the resurrection too, that it being the new man, the new idea of ourselves, the resurrected individual, that would shine light into the darkness. And the dark part of Christ's passion was, of course, when he was on the cross, and he seemed to have lost his whole concept, his whole ideas about love and beauty and things that he preached. But the resurrection then shines light into this area. And that's what I wanted to project into that painting, that this is what we hopefully will be someday, and it will shed light. And that's a symbolical thing. It's symbolic of opening up our own darkness, our own minds, and allowing the light to come through. See?
The central panel is an interesting one with the fisherman in the boat, and obviously there's the strong link to Newfoundland, its fishing traditions and so on. What about the fact that there are 3 figures in the boat? Is that important to?
No, I didn't mean it that way. A lot of people thought that it might have been the apostles, or 3 of the apostles, Peter and so on, but that's not the case at all. I meant that to represent ourselves and our daily lives, going about our daily routine of fishing and the hardships of fishing and the way we live, and have these people totally unaware of what's happening here, you know, that this thing happens to us individually all the time, and we're not really aware of it. And there's a crucifixion and there's a resurrection going on all the time, you know. And two, to bring in, of course, the tie with the sea and fishing, which was very symbolic in the church too. Of course, the fish was a symbol of Christianity at one time.
Mm-hmm. All of which seems to make the Newfoundland landscape even more appropriate.
Makes it even more appropriate, yeah. It makes it so real, or surreal. It's a project that I've been wanting to do for a long time, but never had the freedom to do it and to make my own artistic decisions. And I'm really excited. I mean, to me, it's one of the most important aspects of my work, of my body of work over the last few years. I think this is the most important part so far.
Has it caused you to reflect at all on you come from, as you mentioned, a slightly different religious background, Salvation Army rather than Catholic. Did you run into any sort of theological discoveries or conflicts with what you grew up in? And
yeah, I got closer to the Catholic Church and the mystical end side of the church. And I've done a fair amount of reading in that area as well, but it's not a matter of fact of discovering that kind of thing. It was more or less discovering more about my own self and the understanding of Christ's teachings. It made me closer to it. And not that I'm a born-again Christian or anything like that. It's just that I think I was put into a position, or forced myself into a position where I had to think about these things. And as I always do, I get involved in my work, and in fact, like an actor would. If you're going to perform something, you have to believe it yourself, because if you don't, then nobody else is going to believe it.
the color in these paintings is very interesting to me. The tones are very soft, and the colors are brighter, I think, than we've associated with your paintings in the past.
I found that my work over the last 2 years has changed quite a bit, and I think this happens to all artists when you get involved in a certain area of thought. The work changes too, you know. And in my dealings with this, with the Stations of the Cross and so on, whatever that is, I'm not quite sure, and what makes those changes happen. But there's definitely a change, and I can see it, and so can others. It's become, the work has become more illuminating and more with brighter colors and softer tones and all of these things. And I'm not quite sure how that happens. It's not a deliberate thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
It's as if the work kind of dictates the style.
It does, yeah, sure. All your thinking as an artist, whatever your thoughts might be, is going to affect what you do. And so it's not an intellectual decision to do that. It just comes out of your spirit or your soul, whatever.
How did you work on them? Because they're in a series, a sequence like that. Did you sort of do one, finish it, then go on to the next?
No, I worked them all at the same time. And I would have them here in my studio, and I'd line them up, and I'd start at the first station and work right through to the 14th, and then put them aside and start again. I think it was around 40 times or 50 times that I went around, did my stations 50
doing the
times.
stations.
That's right. And but really involved in them, you know, because I wanted to keep this continuity as much as I could, and I didn't want the color changes to happen too much, because it all happened in that one, you know, few hours. And I wanted to keep the skies pretty well the same, and the lighting of the landscape is fairly the same. So I had to do it that way. You know.
At the back of the church, there are 8 drawings, pencil drawings. Were these done as studies for the triptych?
I made those during the working process. When I first started the ideas, they were just very sketchy ideas, plans, compositional plans, basically. And then as the work progressed, I got involved in the drawing aspect. I didn't do very much drawing on the stations because they were pretty well in my mind, but I had to make decisions about the face of Christ, for instance, and the placement of the hands, and what those hands would show. For instance, I made, I think, 6 or 7 drawings of the crucified hand, and some of them were like they would appear to be dead. The hand would be dead, and I didn't want to have a dead Christ on the cross. I wanted him to be alive, and in the dying process. But I wanted still to show there was life left in him, and so I made the drawings, and most of the hands were very dead, as you can see in the sketches. But then there was one that I finally got the right movement of the fingers and so on, and showed the agony of the thing, and so I used that one. And with the Christ face. In the drawing, I found that the face was a bit too angry, and I didn't want to show that either, although one would be under circumstances. But I wanted to show more of the compassion of Christ rather than his particular anger and his understanding. And so I used the angry face, but in the painting it changed. And then the face became more compassionate, more understanding. So those are things that you have to deal with, something of that nature.
Hands are really prominent, both in the paintings as well.
Yeah. Well, the hands is what we use to express ourselves with, and our hands are. If you look at people's hands, they're always as expressive as their faces are, and those are the 2 elements that I play with a lot in my paintings. Faces and hands, because those are the what reflects what we do, you know, and how we feel, and our psychological things all come out in the hands and so on. Study of hands is very interesting.
Are hands as difficult to paint as we've been led to believe?
Yeah, hands are very difficult to paint. You know. I have always had trouble with them. But I've overcome a lot of it in working on in this series, because I've had to deal with them more. Because there's so much to them, you know. There's all these joints and crinkles and flesh and different sizes and expression, you know. And if you don't get that into paintings, then you lose it. You lose the emotion. And quite often the painting, some of the stations, the hands is what really gives the emotion in that painting. You know, the grasping of the rock, for instance, in the 3rd fall of Christ. And those hands, although I've made them deliberately large, because I just wanted to show that expression. He's grasping for the rock as he's looking into the water, being thirsty and so on. He's grasping for that. So it shows that kind of expression that I wanted to project. It's so easy with hands, you know, providing you know how to do them well.
2 of the drawings show the crucified hand with a bird perched on them, which you didn't end up using that idea in the painting. No. But I find them to be very expressive, very moving, and it's interesting to me how that, although they're so much alike, they're really so much different in what they seem to say.
You mean both the drawings?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I originally had wanted to use a bird on the cross in the painting, not just in the drawing, but in the painting, because I just wanted to, a very simple explanation for that is that the bird is unaware or not concerned about who our gods are. I mean, a bird would very easily pick the eyes out of Christ without even thinking about it. So he's not connected with that kind of thinking and that kind of theology. But as it worked out, the bird didn't work very well in the painting, so I removed it. And so it remains in the drawing. It's a very interesting statement as a drawing. You know.
I don't know if it's intentional or not, but one of them looks very hopeful and sort of optimistic to me, and the other exactly the opposite. It's almost as if one is
that wasn't the intention. I just wanted to just put the bird in there for that very simple thing that we're always so concerned about our religion and our gods, and these animals are free of that.
Nature is mindless.
Yeah, they're mindless. Yeah. Yeah. In the beautiful sense of the word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You seem to have been doing a tremendous amount of work aside from the commissions for the church. You've been doing a lot of landscapes and that sort of thing too.
Yeah, I've kept working with the landscape a lot. I had a show in Toronto recently, 37 landscapes that I made during the summer, sketching outdoors. But I've kept at other things as well. I mean, these stations and the triptych, although they demand an awful lot of my time, I still work on other things as well. You know, I'm not totally strapped to the studio from that point of view. You know? Yeah.
Not a total immersion.
No, well, it is an immersion in a way, but it's not that restrictive. You know. But I've noticed too that in working on the stations, and you were talking about the landscape and how it's changed a lot in my work, but it's also affected my painting outdoors. My landscapes are becoming has more color in them, and they're subtler, they're not as gloomy as they at one time were. You know, I'm not quite sure what that means, but I'm excited about it because I don't approach my work in a deliberate manner. You know, I don't have any rules for this output of mine, and I play it by ear an awful lot, and I just allow the images to come, and I deal with them, and I go out painting, and whatever happens, happens. I don't have a program as such.
Do you ever worry about drying up, running out of ideas or anything like that?
Well, we all worry about that, especially when you get to middle age. You worry a lot about it. But it hasn't been really affecting me that much, you know. I hope to go on painting the rest of my life. I mean, I don't know how to do anything else, you know. So if I lose this one,
Too late for job retraining.
It's too late. Too late. That's right. Yeah.
Well, Jerry, thanks very much.
Okay, you're welcome.